In our headlines on this Monday, May 19th, here in South Korea, we are counting down 15 days to the June 3rd snap election, and presidential hopefuls faced off in the first TV debate regarding the economy this past Sunday before commencing their campaigns here in Seoul today. As mentioned ahead, the first presidential election debate on Sunday evening covered the economy, and candidates all agreed to address the ailing economy, but their proposed approaches differed. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is placing pressure on American trade partners, warning of reciprocal tariffs announced in April if they fail to pursue deals in, quote, good faith. Welcome to the Daily Report. I'm Min San-hee. We start here in Seoul, where presidential contenders are seeking voter support following their first TV debate Sunday night. I have our political correspondent Shin Ha-young standing by live with the latest from the Liberal camp. Ha-young, welcome. Now, do start us off with Lee Jae-myung's agenda for today.
Sunny, I'm currently in front of Times Square in Yeongdeung-pogu district, southwest of Seoul, where Democratic Party presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung is currently delivering his rally speeches. And as you can see behind me, a large crowd has gathered in front of the stage. And during his speech, he emphasized the national unity as well as the importance of the upcoming election. And before coming to Yeongdeung-pogu, he held a rally near Yongsan Station. Take a listen.
Life is tough, isn't it? Things feel unstable. On June 3rd, let's bring this to an end. Let's build a new country together, one where people are truly respected and where peace and stability lead to a better, happier life.
He kicked off his official campaign in Seoul last week, then headed south. Now he's back in the capital, making stops in busy areas across the city today. And ahead of the rally on Monday, he addressed real estate issues, saying that he will manage real estate policy by increasing supply when it's lacking, following the basic principle of supply and demand. And his campaign in Seoul aims to reach both older and younger generations to highlight unity across age groups. And he will wrap up Monday's rallies near Hongdae.
Right, near Hongdae. Meanwhile, Ha-young, I hear Lee's camp is ramping up security around him. Could you tell us a bit more?
Sure, Sunny. The Democratic Party is strengthening security for Lee after receiving multiple reports of suspected assassination threats against him. And starting from today, Lee began delivering his rally speeches from behind bulletproof glass. And this comes as concerns over Lee's safety are growing within the party and among his supporters, especially after he was stabbed in the neck during a visit to Busan in January last year. And he has already been wearing a 3-kilogram bulletproof vest while campaigning.
Inequality, polarization, and insurrection have pushed our society into extreme division and conflict, to the point where a presidential candidate now has to wear a bulletproof vest while campaigning.
His camp is also keeping people away from areas near the stage, and he's avoiding physical contact with supporters, such as shaking hands. And bulletproof glass was also used by U.S. President Donald Trump during his campaign after he was shot. And Trump was protected on all 4 sides, but he's using 2 side panels, reportedly due to limited production time. And that's all for now, Sunny.
All right, Ha-young, thank you for that coverage of the Liberal camp. Up next, we turn to the Conservative camp, whose contender Kim Moon-soo is also campaigning here in Seoul. For details on that, I have our Kim Do-yeon standing by live. Do-yeon, welcome back. So I hear Kim has highlighted Seoul's ties with Washington.
That's right, Sunny. First, I'm out here in Seoul Station, where the campaign is preparing for a rally that's about to start in about an hour. Now, Kim hasn't held a big rally yet for the day, with this upcoming one being the only one. But that doesn't mean that he hasn't held a tight schedule. Now, as you said, he had an event at the American Chamber of Commerce in Korea where he said if elected, he'll meet with U.S. President Donald Trump right away. Take a listen.
If I'm elected president, I will visit the United States as early as June to hold a prompt summit with President Trump and swiftly resolve issues that are hindering economic cooperation between our two countries.
He also added that he will open ways for South Korean and U.S. companies to cooperate in different industries, including advanced technology and culture, not just security. And as he has been emphasizing, he pledged to American companies that he will lift any unnecessary regulations so that more investments are made in South Korea. Of course, this comes after the televised debate last night, where he claimed that his DP rival Lee Jae-myung was pro-China. As his other events on his schedule, he also gave pledges to the younger generation, with today being Coming of Age Day here in South Korea. He said he will create more jobs and give them more opportunities. In addition, he also said he will tackle the issue of marriage for young adults by lifting some of the budgetary burdens for weddings and providing them places to live.
Right, Toyon, and staying with his efforts to garner support, I understand Kim has been reaching out to his conservative rival Jun-seok of the Reform Party. Could you tell us a bit more?
That's right, Sonny. First, the two met earlier today as they both participated in an event held by Seoul City on helping the less privileged. There, Kim apologized to the new Reform Party candidate, saying that when he was the leader of the People Power Party, the party did him wrong, and he also praised Lee on his debate performance last night. But it was also during the Amcham event when Kim said this in light of the question of how he's going to overturn the current landscape against the DP's Lee Jae-myung.
Things are gradually improving. If you watched the debate yesterday, you would have seen Reform Party candidate Jun-seok. He used to be our party leader, and now he's out there representing a certain segment. If I can bring together people like him and unify our efforts, I believe we can bring about significant change.
Now, Jun-seok rejected any idea of merger with Kim. In addition, looking at all the polls out there, the two's approval rating combined still doesn't beat their DP rival. But as the race goes on, with more exposure to voters, ratings will fluctuate, and the so-called anti-Lee Jae-myung alliance could be one of the endings. That's all for now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Toyon, thank you for the coverage of the conservative camp. Staying on the campaign trail, Reform Party candidate Jun-seok has pledged to raise the real income of senior Koreans. Speaking to members of the media at Gwanghwamun Square on this Monday, he spoke of simplifying their qualification for reverse mortgage, as some of the elderly rely heavily on their real estate for income. He also shared plans to raise the mortgage limit to accommodate their potential need for a large sum of money. Now, as mentioned earlier, the first four presidential contenders held their first debate on live television this past Sunday with the focus on the economy. Our correspondent Oh Seong covers their comments and more.
Pledging to save Korea from its present economic downturn, the four main presidential candidates held their first televised debate live on Sunday, beginning with the task of improving livelihoods. Democratic Party candidate Lee Jae-myung promised big government spending, with funding towards debt forgiveness for small business owners, more research and development in AI, and new industries in energy and culture.
We need a supplementary budget as soon as possible, within feasible limits, to revive domestic demand and everyday livelihoods.
The People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo agreed on boosting spending to offer subsidies and debt restructuring for small firms. He pledged to be a, quote, jobs president, using regulatory reform to support growth in high-tech sectors.
By eliminating excessive regulations, businesses won't feel forced to move abroad and can confidently operate locally and create jobs.
Reform Party leader Jun-seok opposed reckless injections of money in time of high inflation and low demand, saying it will hurt, not benefit, small companies. He proposed regional governments set their own minimum wage and focus more on building national competence in sectors critical to economic growth.
To beat China, we need not only an understanding of science and technology, but also competent leadership that can communicate freely with global leaders.
Meanwhile, the Democratic Labour Party's Kwon Young-guk focused more on overcoming inequality for workers, farmers, women and minorities.
A world where you work hard yet remain poor, where you are driven further to the margins, This unequal world must not be left as it is.
With the topic turning to America's tariffs on its trading partners, Lee Jae-myung said negotiations must begin, but Korea must also diversify its export items. He said the door should stay open to Russia and China. Kim Moon-soo promised to hold a summit with US leader Donald Trump and resolve bilateral issues based on their personal trust. Lee Jun-seok suggested a cool strategic response that highlights South Korea's strength in semiconductors and its value as Washington's long-standing security partner. Kwon Young-guk showed the US a red card and said he will not submit to predatory trade tactics. The two candidates leading the polls faced intensive questioning. Lee Jae-myung was under fire for his proposed wind power project, largely involving Chinese firms, and his alleged affinity with Beijing. Lee was also grilled on alleged illegal payments made to North Korea during his time as Gyeonggi-do province governor, with the Reform Party candidate suggesting Lee's plans to legalize domestic spot cryptocurrency ETFs could also potentially fund North Korea. Meanwhile, Kim Moon-soo was strongly criticized for being a part of the impeached Yoon Suk-yeol administration as former Labour Minister. Lee Jae-myung said Kim should share the blame for the sluggish economy. And Kwon Young-guk slammed Kim's endorsement of allowing extra working hours for semiconductor workers. The next live debate will take place on Friday, focusing on social issues. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And polling stations overseas will open doors starting Tuesday for registered Korean voters abroad to cast their ballots for the 21st presidential election. According to the National Election Commission, overseas voting will take place at 182 Korean embassies, consulates, diplomatic missions and offices for a 6-day period. Voting hours are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Additional voting booths in various U.S. states are also slated to open from Thursday to Saturday. A South Korean trade delegation is poised to depart for the U.S. this week for more technical talks on tariffs. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji has the latest.
As South Korea seeks to reach a trade deal with the U.S. by early July, senior officials in Seoul are set to travel to Washington as early as Tuesday for talks on tariffs. This comes after South Korea's finance and trade ministers met with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer in late April and requested exemptions from higher levies. U.S. President Donald Trump on April 2nd announced a set of reciprocal tariffs on major trading partners, including South Korea, before putting a temporary pause to those levies for 90 days. He said on Friday that time is running out for countries to make trade deals with the United States.
And we have, at the same time, 150 countries that want to make a deal, but you're not able to see that many countries. So at a certain point over the next 2 to 3 weeks, I think Scott and Howard will be sending letters out essentially telling people, it would be very fair, but we'll be telling people what they'll be paying to do business in the United States.
Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Bessent said in an interview with CNN on Sunday that Trump has put countries on notice that if they don't negotiate in good faith, tariffs will soon return to the April 2nd levels. Bessent also noted there are 18 important trading partners that the U.S. is most focused on solidifying deals with, while adding that there are a lot of smaller trading relationships. As the deadline looms, he said Washington may impose some tariffs by region rather than on individual countries. Addressing the concerns on tariff uncertainties, the Korean government earlier explained that this week's consultation will be focused on 6 key areas: balanced trade, non-tariff measures, economic security, digital trade, country of origin, and commercial considerations.
Yeah, so I think that connects to what I really think is the critical thing here, which is the economic security issue. So on that front, the White House would like to kind of get this big headline win on so-called friendshoring semiconductor and battery supply chains. That is, the U.S. kind of wants to have these supply chains run through an allied country like Korea.
With only about 50 days left until the July 8th deadline, when the temporary pause on tariffs is lifted, eyes are now on whether South Korea will be able to make some meaningful progress in this week's talks. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
And in other news, the finance ministry has sought to ease fears about the impact of the downgrade in the U.S. credit rating by Moody's last Friday. The credit rating agency lowered America's rating by one notch to AA1 from AAA, citing concerns over rising debt. Ministry officials here say the impact of the U.S. credit cut on the Korean economy appears limited as it was anticipated. Moody's rating now matches that of Fitch Ratings and S&P, whose analysts lowered their U.S. rating back in the year 2023 and 2011, respectively. Separately, acting President Lee Joo-ho has called for close monitoring of financial markets by relevant authorities. In the Middle East, Israel has agreed to the basic flow of food into Gaza amid its launch of a fresh ground offensive against Hamas. Our Jun-seok reports.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office released a statement on Sunday, which stated that under the recommendation of the Israeli Defense Forces, it would allow a basic quantity of food into Gaza so that a starvation crisis would be avoided, as such a situation would jeopardize the IDF's latest extensive ground operation. It was not immediately clear when or how aid would enter Gaza, but Netanyahu said that Israel would work to ensure Hamas does not take control of the aid. The announcement came after the Israeli military said earlier on Sunday that it had begun extensive ground operations in the northern and southern parts of the enclave, named Operation Gideon's Chariot, including both active duty and reservist troops. The IDF said it would continue to operate against the terrorist organizations in the Gaza Strip in order to defend Israeli civilians, having conducted a preliminary wave of intensive airstrikes on more than 670 Hamas targets in Gaza over the past week to support Gideon's Chariot. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry reported significant civilian casualties of more than 400 people in the 4 days since the offensives began last week, including the more than 100 people killed in Gaza on Sunday. Meanwhile, there have been reports that no progress has been made in a new round of indirect talks between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas in Qatar. Netanyahu's office said his negotiating team in Qatar was working to realize every chance for a deal, but its position remained unchanged that fighting would end in exchange for the release of all remaining 58 hostages, the exile of Hamas terrorists from Gaza, and the disarmament of the territory. Hamas has refused to leave Gaza or disarm, as officials from the militant group said it was still proposing the release of all Israeli hostages in return for an end to the war, the pullout of Israeli troops, and an end to a blockade on aid for Gaza, and the release of Palestinian prisoners. Jun-seok, Arirang News.
Here on the peninsula, North Korea this past weekend shared images showing its first live-fire test of an air-to-air missile. According to its state media, the missile intercepted targets during a training session last Thursday overseen by Kim Jongun. This is the first public test since the missile's 2021 unveiling. South Korea, for its part, has yet to develop its own air-to-air missile, and experts here believe North Korea may have received Russian technology, particularly in radar and software, in return for troop deployment. Korean temple food has been designated as a National Intangible Cultural Heritage. The Korea Heritage Service announced the designation earlier on this Monday, underscoring the food's focus on core Buddhist values, including that of life, as it excludes meat and fish. Temple food has also been applauded for its cultural value as it continues to be passed down in monastic communities, embracing both tradition and creative reinterpretation. May is a busy month for farmers here in the country, and seasonal workers from neighboring countries are offering much-needed assistance. Our Park Onu files this report.
A vast area of crop fields stretches across Cheongyangun County in Chungcheongnam-do Province, a countryside region where farming is central. It's easy to find land and vinyl greenhouses here, but much harder to find people to farm them, especially in May, Korea's peak farming season. That's a sharp contrast to the past, when entire villages in rural regions work side by side in the traditional ture system during busy times. But with Korea's aging population and younger people moving to cities, rural labor shortages have become a growing challenge. That's where new helping hands are stepping in. foreign seasonal workers employed legally under Korea's E-8 visa program from 2017. Dressed in farming gear, those workers began their work early, braving the heat and humidity. On this day, they cleared frost protection plastic from the soil and carried heavy metal pipes used to support crops, all while wading through muddy fields. I've only been working alongside them in this pepper field for a few minutes, and I'm already starting to sweat. But it's these foreign workers who help local farmers do this every single day. Though language can be a barrier, many see this as a chance to learn.
Working here isn't too hard, especially knowing I can send money home to my family. Communication can be difficult at times, but I'm learning a lot, using farming machines and new techniques that I hope to take back and use on my own farm someday.
And farmers describe their help as vital.
They're like lifelines for us. Without this workforce, farming in our rural community simply couldn't continue. Without their help, my wife and I could only manage a much smaller piece of land.
Due to its popularity, the number of these workers is growing, with nearly 70,000 foreign seasonal workers coming to Korea this year alone, thousands more than the year before. Local governments are expanding agreements with other cities abroad, and even considering longer-term visas. While the spring remains busy in the countryside, the shoulders of local farmers bearing the weight of our food supply are now a little lighter, thanks to help from afar. 박건우, Arirang News, 청양.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Pope Leo XIV was formally inaugurated as the 267th pontiff of the Catholic Church on Sunday. The Mass in St. Peter's Square marked the official commencement of his papacy following his election on May 8th.
I was chosen without any merit of my own, and now, with fear and trembling, I come to you as a brother who desires to be the servant of your faith and your joy.
The inauguration Mass began with Pope Leo, the first American-born pope, praying at the tomb of St. Peter, symbolizing continuity with the apostolic tradition. He then traveled through the square in the Pope-mobile, watched by an estimated 200,000 attendees. Also at the ceremony were global figures such as U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. During the ceremony, Pope Leo received the pallium and the fisherman's ring, traditional symbols of papal authority. In his inaugural address, he emphasized unity, compassion, and social justice, calling for the Church to be one of unity and love and to walk towards God and love one another. In Romania, pro-West centrist Bucharest Mayor Nicușor Dan has been elected as the country's new president. Dan defeated right-wing candidate George Simion in a closely watched runoff election on Sunday. With nearly all votes counted, Dan has secured approximately 54%, while Simion received about 46%. The election followed the cancellation of the previous year's results due to alleged foreign interference, favoring another right-wing candidate, Călin Georgescu. Dan, a 55-year-old mathematician and civic activist, campaigned with an emphasis on anti-corruption measures, judicial reform, and strengthening Romania's ties with the European Union and NATO. He said his victory reaffirmed Romania's commitment to democratic values and proved the incredible power of the Romanian society. In the United States, 2 people died and 22 others were injured when a Mexican Navy training vessel crashed into New York City's Brooklyn Bridge on Saturday evening. The ARM Cuauhtémoc, a tall ship of the Mexican Navy, was departing New York City as part of its global goodwill tour when it collided with the Brooklyn Bridge after the vessel lost steering control, causing it to drift. The ship was carrying 277 individuals and was scheduled to visit 22 ports in 15 countries over a 254-day voyage. No rescue operations were required as no one fell into the water as a result of the incident. Also in the United States, a car bomb detonated outside the American Reproductive Center's fertility clinic in Palm Springs, California on Saturday morning, killing the suspected bomber and injuring 4 others. The FBI called the incident an intentional act of terrorism by a 25-year-old suspect with anti-natalist beliefs. The suspect reportedly had nihilistic ideations, and opposed procreation and also attempted to live stream the attack. The blast damaged the clinic and surrounding buildings, but no patients or embryos were harmed as the clinic was closed at the time. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
The central and southern parts of the country have very different skies today. The central areas are affected by rain clouds from the afternoon, having cloudy skies. The expected rainfall will be up to 20 millimeters in the Seoul metropolitan area and Gangwon-do province, and up to 10 millimeters in the Chungcheong-do provinces. This rain will mostly subside by early tomorrow morning. In addition, the winds are also strong, with a preliminary warning for strong winds in place. Typhoon-like gusts of more than 50 meters per second will hit the East Sea and the West Coast, and winds of 25 meters per second or more will hit the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province and Gyeongsang-buk-do province. Tomorrow morning, Seoul and Gyeongju will start off at 17 degrees Celsius, Gwangju at 20 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 27 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 24 degrees in Busan. Between Wednesday and Thursday, rain is expected throughout the east. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at the start here in South Korea. A panel session is up next. Do stay with us.